This is Federico with Cuddle, and welcome to today's live stream. I have something for you today that is related to the thing we did last week, but I wanted to explore some subtleties, and it's kind of inspired by these posts that someone Jacqueline put on Facebook about making a template that kind of looks like this picture. I understand that this is not their picture, but it can serve as inspiration for what we want to do. So I think everyone is have a number of viewers, and yeah, thank you for coming. Al from St. Charles, hi, and so I'm gonna get started. So I'm just gonna use this one here as inspiration. But the basic idea is that we're going to be using some offsets. So we're going to create a name, and then I'm pointing here at the white section of the name. Then we're going to create an offset that goes around that name. And then we want to do something slightly different from last time, which is we want to add a number of elements that then also get a backer. So the elements here would be the flowers and the petals. And then we want to set it up for cutting. And also, so yeah, let's get started. So this is my Cuddle project. I'm just showing you the README where I posted this picture, but I'm going to go to the editor part. So here I am. And so I'm going to start with the most basic thing, which is I'm going to create, I'm going to create a component with connected text. So I'm going to search for connected there in the search box. I'm going to place it here. And then I'm going to align it center. And I think that's sufficient. And so I think we want to start by setting up the size that we want the sign to be, roughly, just to make life easier for the future. So if I look at this kind of inspiration picture here, this looks to be about a foot in length. So that sounds like, yeah, that sounds pretty big. So I'm gonna go near that size, but it's good to set it up initially. So I'm gonna type here 10 inches, which is just roughly, and I'm gonna use a name. I'll use my name. I know it's a long one. All right, so this component, I'm gonna rename it. I'm gonna call it the name. And so this is just like the base component. So then I'm gonna create another component. And so I think part of this, part of the thing today is to understand how components are related to each other. So I'm gonna create a new one, and I'm gonna call this one the middle layer. And so I'm gonna drag the name component into my middle layer. I'm gonna repeat that. The way I did it is I'm on the middle layer, and I'm gonna drag the first component here. And so to this one, I'm gonna apply that offset or expand modifier that we were using before. So I'm gonna go to edit, and then, sorry, I'm gonna go to modify. The modifier is live. I'm gonna apply the offset or expand. So I think if I look at the picture inspiration, this would be this kind of like pink section above the name. So I have my name, I have a middle layer. And so just to kind of get you familiar to how these things are related, if I go back to this name component and I change the text that I have here, when I change it while I'm here, we'll see how it affects the other one. Let's try Daniel. And so check this out. If I go back to the middle layer, you'll see that there is that text, but with the applied expand. So So now we want to create. I'm gonna go ahead and create the other layer, which is the bottom layer. So by that I mean create kind of like all the stuff where the back is. So I'm gonna create yet another component. Hopefully you can see it there. Maybe I should move myself a little bit down. So this one is gonna be called the bottom layer. So I'm gonna go ahead and call it the bottom layer. And so I think this one is quite similar. I'm just gonna apply a bigger expand. So once again, I'm gonna drag the name, the first component, into this one, and then I'm gonna add a bigger expand to that one. So just the same expand, then increase the distance for the expand here. And so now let's go back and make some modifications. So far so good. I have 3 components and they're all kind of like related because they are all kind of like different applications, different kind of modifications to the name component. So I got the name, the middle layer, and the bottom layer. So now let's try and add those kind of decorative elements. So I'm gonna try and add a single one, and I'm gonna specifically add it to the middle layer. So I'm gonna do a heart. So we have these like basic shapes, and so I'm gonna place it here in the middle layer. And so the idea is that if I go look at the inspiration, you'll see that they're like different. The flowers are different sizes, and they're kind of placed in such a way that like the composition looks interesting. So let's see about that. So I'm gonna just place a few hearts. And then again, I'm gonna move them around and change the sizes. I can always add another heart by looking for it. If I place it where I want it, I can rotate it by just using the handles. So if I go near it, you'll see that the handle turns into a little curved arrow. So if I click there, it lets me rotate it how I want it. Additionally, if I place it on the corner itself of the handle, I can stretch it, make it bigger and smaller. And I'm just gonna place like 3 or 4 hearts around the name. Additionally, besides having to look it up every time, you can duplicate the existing ones. So if I click on it and I right click it, I'll get an option that says duplicate. So that just kind of makes a new copy and puts it right in place. So I don't know, let's kind of like different ways to look at this composition. Maybe I'll add another one on the right hand side. So I'm gonna duplicate this one and place it here. So anyway, let's start with these. See what that looks like. So I just realized I actually made a little bit of a mistake. So as you can see, the bottom layer should include those hearts. So I'm gonna move over to the bottom layer. And so I'm gonna delete what I did here because what I want the bottom layer to be is I want it to include the hearts. So that means I need to place the middle layer onto the bottom layer. So I'm gonna, while I have the bottom layer selected, I'm gonna place the middle layer in here. So far so good. The middle and the bottom look the same, but actually to the bottom layer, I wanna apply the expand because that includes the hearts. So I'm gonna select everything and then apply the expand or offset. And I'm gonna make it bigger. And probably I don't want those holes right there. So I'm gonna apply that remove holes modifier, which is down here. All right, so I'm gonna repeat this a couple times because like the threading here, it goes something like this. I started with the name, then I created a middle layer, I placed the name here, I applied that expand, and I added a bunch of hearts. Then I created a bottom layer, and then I placed the middle layer in there, and then I applied the expand, and I removed the holes. So they're sort of like threaded one into the other. And so what ends up happening there is that if I were to change the first one, then ideally all of them, I mean, not ideally, all of them are going to change. So let's try another name here. So check this out. I changed the name. Then if I look at the middle layer, that changed as well. It retained the hearts, and the bottom layer changed as well. We can see how it. So you're starting to see slightly the slight downside of this template is that every time we change the name, we actually have to go in and move around the elements to create the composition. So add another one over here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a sort of preview layer that shows me everything at the same time. If you have any questions, feel free to post it in the comments. But so I'm going to create yet another component here. So I'm going to click the plus, and I'm going to call that one the preview. And so the preview is going to be composed of a bottom layer, then a middle layer, and I'm careful to place these all right at the origin, so they're all aligned. And it's going to be composed also of the name, the original part. So this way I can kind of see them all, see everything in place. And I can even, in this preview layer, I can apply some color, and that is not going necessarily to affect all of those individual components, but it's going to allow me to get a better view of things. So I'm going to select the bottom layer and then just change the fill. Let's make it a little lighter. I'm going to try some sort of light pink. Then I'm going to select the middle layer, and I can select them on the canvas, or I can select them up here, whatever seems more understandable to you. So I'm going to select the middle layer, and let's give that one also a fill. And I suppose I could try a sort of related pink, but make it a little lighter. And then for the top layer or the name itself, I'm also going to give it a fill. And let's do that one white. So that's my preview of how things are going to turn out. And so the beauty of the preview is that it also allows me to do some edits while I'm looking at everything. Because like so far, what I was doing was I would go to the name. I could change the name. Let's go back to my long name. And then I'm going to the middle layer to kind of move those other elements around, like the hearts. Hopefully that they're not touching the... And then I don't have to touch the bottom layer. That's kind of just automated. And if I look at the preview, then I can see that the hearts are there. But it would be much more convenient not to have to go and like change layers and kind of lose the view of the whole composition. So there is an interesting way of doing that, which is I'm going to go back to that preview. And so actually I can go ahead and edit the middle layer directly, like right here in this preview component. So what I need to do in order to do that is that if I click, so here you can see how the middle layer gets highlighted. And if I double click onto it, you see that I get this like focus mode, this kind of spotlight. And then it's kind of showing me here what are all the things that make up the middle layer. So in this way, I'm actually changing just the middle layer. So I can like move the hearts around, and you can see how because the middle layer affects that bottom layer, then I actually get that cool expand happening in the background. So this is a nice way of just doing the edits, changing the hearts. I could kind of treat it just as if I were editing directly the middle layer. I can say duplicate a heart and then place it somewhere else. So, and meanwhile, I'm kind of remaining in that like focus mode. I can change that one. And if I want to get out of the focus mode where I'm not editing that specific layer, I can simply click on the canvas on the outside, and now I'm back on editing this preview. So hopefully that was somewhat clear, because like that part is kind of important, that like when you double click into the layer, like so you're actually editing the layer is kind of like the same as going here, where is the middle layer, and then I would be editing those things. But with the preview, I get the benefit of like just having, you know, being able to look at the entire composition. Just to sort of reinforce that point that you can go into specific layers to edit them. So the other thing I can do again is like I can go to the name, I can change that name. If I click on it, I get this text. So while in the preview, I could do the same as long as I focus into that name layer. So here I am focusing the name layer. I'm gonna double click into it. And so right here on the inspector, I can see that the main part that that's happening there is this connected text. And if I click into it, let's make a change. And I type any other name, you'll see how that that's affecting both the middle layer, because I can see the additional outline that I created, and also the bottom layer. So, all right, cool. So I was kind of like very careful to explain that in detail, but then let's try and set it up for cutting, because like we're trying to do this like either as a laser cut situation or even a vinyl sticker. It could this looks like a sort of old school sticker. So when I want to set it up for cutting, I'm going to kind of make use of all those components again, but in a slightly different way. So let's create yet another component. Once again, I'm going to have to move myself over here so I can show you the name of that component. And so I'm going to call this one the cut, or the cut layer. And so I want to set it up here. So this one is going to have kind of like all of the layers I have created except for the preview. So it's going to have the name, because I want to cut that for sure. It's going to have a middle layer, because I want to cut that as well. And then I think for the structure of this particular one, I'm going to leave those hearts kind of like hanging out in place, and then just kind of like move them around when I'm ready to cut it. Oh, that's a good question. Somebody's asking if you can do that editing by clicking over here. So if I double click over here, no, you can't. The question was like, you know, to go into the edit mode, you need to double click into the canvas. So that gives me into the focus mode. If I do it over here, it allows me to edit the name of this kind of instance of the component. So yeah, or let me see. Yeah, good question. But so go back to this cut layer. So I place my name, I place my middle layer, and I need a bottom layer. So here you can sort of, you know, I separated them so I can cut them separately, and you can add any changes right here just to organize things for your own cutting. Like here, you could just like simply export it as an SVG and then set it up. But possibly you might want to like change the color, for example. I'm going to change the stroke to red. That's what I use for cuts in general. I'm trying to change the stroke to red here as well. And if you notice, this is only affecting this particular instance of it. Because if I go back to the preview, I applied all those color changes too in a sort of different instance of it, and that doesn't necessarily affect the original one. Something else that is kind of nice to do in this case is that, you know, once I have all these things cut, then I'm going to have to sort of place them, you know, I'm gonna simulate the placing here. So once this is cut, I'm gonna have to like align it kind of nicely on top of that layer, and then I'm gonna have to take these and kind of align it also on top of this one, and that might be a little bit hard, but there is an interesting way to do it, kind of combining the stuff we did last time. So I'm gonna stick here on the cut layer. So this one I'm gonna leave alone because that's just gonna be a single piece. This one, I'm gonna go ahead and drag that name again, and I'm gonna be careful that they are aligned to the origin. And then let me make them separate so I keep it clear. So when I cut this piece, I'm gonna score the name where I'm gonna place it. So I usually change the color of scores to blue. So that's gonna be, the red is gonna be a cut and the blue is gonna be a score. And a score, again, if you're not familiar with that, is when you set the laser to cut at lower power, so it doesn't go all the way through, but it still kind of follows the outline of the shape. It's not an engrave where like the machine is going kind of back and forth, creating a sort of raster image. So, but then if I score it just as says, when I'm placing the piece on top like that, the score might be visible. And so the nice thing to do would be to kind of inset it or to contract it a little bit. So I still have a guide, but then once I glue my piece, the score kind of, it's covered by that piece. So into this one, the blue one I just made, I'm gonna apply that modifier, the contract, which I call the evil twin to the expand. And usually here in some of the published templates, we've done something like very small, like 0.03 inches. So that's just like small enough that when I place the piece, it helps to be, it helps me guide the thing, but it doesn't show through. Like if I zoom in, I can show you the result. So the original is on the blue outline, and the result is the final. Sorry, the light blue is the original, and the result is the dark blue. So if I were to simulate that, I'm gonna add a fill this one just temporarily to simulate that process. So when I place it on top, then I guess my simulation is not. But anyway. When I place it on top, that blue score should disappear. So that's all good. I don't want the fill on this one. That was just it. And then I'm gonna do the same for the very bottom layer to help me place things again. So once again, the guide for this one is gonna be the middle. So if I can make it sort of, you see how it snaps here on the origin of the other piece? I want it to snap like that. So they're like aligned. And I'm gonna do the same operation here. So I'm gonna select this one. I'm gonna change the stroke to blue for a score. And I'm gonna apply the contract modifier to that, only to the blue one. So contract it. You can see how it shrinks. You can always adjust the distance here just by dragging. I'm going to drag it to 0.03. And so the effect there is that I end up with a sort of scored guide to that one. And just to make sure, I'm going to try and, so yeah, this would be my final cut layer. And just to double check that everything's working in my kind of like very threaded architecture, I can always go back and change the name. So here we go. And I can middle layer working, bottom layer working, preview working, and cut layer working, except for the caveat that we had that in this particular case, you need to sort of go and change the composition of the of the additional elements kind of by eye. But once I change it, here we change it in the preview, which is double click into it, move things around. I guess you could spell Allison with an I. I could always delete elements if I don't want them. Kind of make sure that this is touching. And my cut layer should be ready to go. Well, perhaps the cut layer here could use a little spacing. So yeah, when you're ready to cut, let me load my Glowforge up here. So when you are ready to cut, you can always, I can always export the SVG. I'm going to export specifically the cut layer. Or I can like copy and paste things here. I use the Command C, Command V. And so I think the idea here is that when you're cutting things, when I'm cutting, the machine is not turned on, so it has the last preview. When I'm cutting things here, I would probably kind of place it in such a way that I can like just place the hearts, whatever. But definitely I would do these on the machine interface. So I could place them anywhere and then create the cut, because that's the old one. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Cool. So that was about half an hour. Hopefully this gives you a kind of nice understanding of how you can like thread one component into the other, and then kind of apply different changes to those to create both the preview and the cut layer, and to allow you to edit things. We were kind of working on a version of these that kind of automates the process of creating all the little gribblies, all these little elements. But it is kind of challenging. It's like, every time you change the name, I think the composition gets altered, and I think often you're just like trying to get like an interesting look. I was kind of like placing all these elements kind of haphazardly just to show you, but I think for each different name, I would probably want to, give it some thought and then create the kind of thing that I want. And of course, this is working. This is kind of like, it's still a template for your own use, because by creating something like this, you already sort of like automated or set up a lot of the process. You don't have to kind of repeat all these operations. I think at the end of the day, if you're creating like a big sign with multiple names, then you simply go ahead and double click where you want it, change the name to the thing that you want. But then all the offsets are applied. The cut layer is immediately ready for you to go. So it's more of I would call it more of a personal template than a sort of like more publishable one. But yeah, that's the way that a lot of people or some people seem to be using Cuddle. Suppose one edit I could do here is that I could go into that and change the distance. You can always also change those elements. Here I'm kind of like double clicking into those layers to change the offsets. Excellent. Thank you very much for watching and for coming to the live stream. I hope this was helpful. And then please leave me any questions in the comments of this video. If you have any, I can answer them in future videos. And this video will be available on Facebook, and I'll also post a version to YouTube in case it's easier to share. All right. I hope you have a nice day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.